Matilda. She's a bit aggressive when it comes to food, and I just ate some food, and she's a big fan of table food, so she's sticking around to see what else she can get. Sorry, cat. Alright, so videos. This might be the last one. I think I came to find out, did some investigating. Quite a few of you were watching these videos all the way through, which kind of makes me happy on one level and sad on another. I just assumed nobody was really watching them, so if I'd actually known people were going to pay attention, I probably would have put more planning into them and given higher production values, but it is what it is. I can't go back and change history. So regarding the last piece of writings, the major writing that was handed in, the drafts are now still getting worked on. I've put all the edits in. It's time consuming. I think those of you who've done the last small stakes assignment have seen that the editing process, when you really get down to it, is significant in terms of how much time it consumes, and if you want to do a good job on it, it takes a lot. The thing is, I'm not going to go through 8 different 9, however many I have, different papers looking for little things to point out to you. I'm going to go through a sort of a list of things. It's always the same thing at this point in the class and moving forward, right? There was a book written by a guy named Dick Couch, who's a former Navy SEAL. I think I might have mentioned it in here. I don't know if I had for sure. I'm not one to fetishize the military, but we can agree that politics aside, U.S. Special Forces do a lot of high-speed, low-drag stuff, and they do it well. And it's difficult and complicated, and they go through a lot of training. And Couch was talking about a guy named Mike Lew, who's a warrant officer at the time, I believe, and he was in charge of the building the training up. And in the course of the related conversation, the Couch wrote about a book I think is called Finishing School. Mike Lew is saying that the difference between a guy who's a raw recruit coming out of I'm not talking about the basic underwater demolition training that SEALs do to get the Trident. That's after that they go to further training, and this is in the further training step. He says the difference between a guy who's in his first combat tour, and a guy who's like a who's been in out on 6 or 7 deployments, of the veteran, is that the veteran does little things right every time. It doesn't matter if you're cold, wet, tired, little things get done right every time. And it really is, it's the little things. And we know from cognitive science, we know when we're teaching writing, I can teach you a bunch of stuff and you'll implement it. And then I'll teach you a bunch of new stuff. And it's like a shelf and there's only so much space on it. And the new stuff pushes the old stuff off the back end. So that's what happens. I'll keep seeing these same errors again and again. Drives me batty, but I can't, all I can do is just tell you, you've got to be vigilant, right? So there are things like remembering to italicize the names of journals, magazines, newspapers, putting footnotes to the right-hand side of punctuation marks. Here's another thing, right? And I harp on this. When someone looks at a sample of your writing, you get a very short period of time. It's like they say, first impressions mean a lot, right? If I look at someone's writing and I see that the body of the text is in one typeface, and I look down and I see that the footnotes are in a different typeface and in the same size as the regular text, I figure this person didn't care enough. You put everything in the same typeface and you make the footnotes smaller than the main text. But if you're not paying attention, you're focusing on other things, you're not doing that. Putting the names of articles inside of quotation marks. Using the correct citation format. A lot of you have pretty much solved that problem, right? The proper use of this and that. This thing right here, that thing over there. This thing I'm about to tell you about, that thing I just told you about. Not starting a sentence with however. Not using the word very. These are just, not writing out the numbers when their whole number is less than 99. Again, using the percent sign instead of writing a percent. Those are little things that if you do them along with keeping the typeface uniform, using the correct font size and so on, those are little things, right? But they make your document look good. And overall, if I'm satisfied looking at a document that it looks well presented, I'll be more inclined than to overlook one little error on it if I see it, right? If I know the person's trying, that makes it so much easier to forgive a small mistake. People still writing with these wall of text paragraphs in a short article like this, in a paragraph that goes on for a page and a quarter or a page and a half, or even a whole section with no paragraph breaks. Little thing to fix, but it makes a big difference. Remember to be using the Oxford comma. This, comma, that, comma, and the other. Need all of them. Making sure your verb tenses match. In the social sciences, we don't talk about claims of proof, nor do we discover things. We discover continents, we discover new planets, we discover new species, but we don't discover things so much in the social sciences. The tendency to hedge, using generic cold open sentences, using contractions in formal discourse, not using em dashes properly, echoing, using the same word more than once in close proximity to each other. Again, we don't want to get that mixed up with inelegant variation, which is another thing. You can look it up in Garner. I've talked about it in these tapes, and also we've got there are times when we want to make sure we keep things parallel. This, using the same structures, if you're setting things off as comma separated phrases, very often you want to keep the same structure to keep it parallel. That's not echoing, that's using parallel structure. Not sufficiently citing. Anytime you make a truth claim that is outside the realm of the normal, right? Outside the sun is fixed and the earth revolves around the sun, that kind of claim. When you get into these truth claims that aren't necessarily something that everyone knows, you need to put citations on them. Orphaning, I've seen a lot of people doing this, where you have at the bottom of the page, you have the name of the next section and then no text below it. Just you have to turn the page to get to it. Just move it down to the top of the next page. It's again something that makes your document look better. I'm big on that stuff. I'm also big on getting subject-verb agreement right and tenses right, and not dangling participles and all that stuff, all that standard grammar stuff that you're supposed to do. But I also think it makes a huge difference if your documents look good. In any event, those are the kind of things that I see still in these articles more than anything else. Putting the punctuation outside of the quotation marks. You've got to get over that. I see virtually everyone does it at some point, and it's just a red flag to somebody who knows how to write, that the person who is writing either doesn't know or doesn't care, and neither of those are good things. It's and its, I've had a few people doing that wrong now. It's without an apostrophe is a possessive form from it. It's with an apostrophe is a contraction of it is, which you shouldn't be using anyway at this point. Those are the kind of things that you need to really get a handle on and make sure you have it right. Then you get a little bit of slack from people. You can perfect your own writing in other ways. You've got to be mindful of all the things that you have to do to make that happen. Like giving yourself sufficient time, making sure you proofread things properly, and most of all, consuming a steady diet of good writing. I don't think anyone's going to learn how to write in less than 3 or 4 years for most of us. So I can't do it in 5 weeks of an online summer class, but I can point you in the right direction, give you the tools, and sort of open your eyes up to that whole world. It makes a difference professionally. You'll go further if you're a good writer than not. And that's what most of you are aiming to do, is to have a future and in a white-collar field. So, I mean, if you want to go, even when I used to have a construction company. I did a lot of writing, though. You have to correspond with clients, you have to correspond with vendors. there's all, you know, building inspectors, there's always something to write. There's very few jobs that you probably want where you're not going to have to write. So become a good writer. It'll pay off. It'll pay big dividends. That's what I got for you. I'll send you all out an email shortly. There are some other things I'll take care of on email, but I think this will probably be it for videos. I'm pretty sure. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. We'll see. Thanks.